3 years ago today, I took my first major step into the world of video by buying the Blackmagic Pocket 6K, a completely game-changing camera for me as a beginner, and to this day, it still holds a special place in my heart. Now, we have the Blackmagic Pocket 6K Pro, and a lot of you have asked me to cover this camera on my channel, but I'm here to tell you today that this camera doesn't need a review. What's going on, guys? Today we have something that a lot of you have asked me to cover, and it's probably the most requested camera on my channel. This is the Blackmagic Pocket 6K Pro. So I want to make a video to where I can share my thoughts and my experiences with this camera and let you know more of how this camera made me feel as a filmmaker rather than reviewing any of the technical specs that this camera has, because we've all seen those videos by now. I have been renting this 6K Pro for about 2.5 months. I've been using it on and off, and it's stirred up some emotions, and it's helped me reflect on how impactful this camera and cameras like this are. And I wanted to talk about it from more of a reflective standpoint and let you know what the future of this camera is with me and what I would have done differently if this would have been an option. So I'm gonna do my best to keep this informative, brief, and fun. And yeah, let's get into this thing. The Pocket 6K Pro has done something that camera manufacturers dream of. It has proved that it is worth the money. Coming in at about $2,500, this camera used to be a standalone, obvious choice. But now there's much more competition from the Sony side, from the Panasonic side, and you start to get the lines blurred. But I doubt that there's something that offers much more value in its features, in its image, and its community. The Blackmagic community never ceases to amaze me with the types of images that they get out of this camera. Like, it is incredible and it is inspiring to see, and it is something that you rarely get with a camera. This has almost a cult-like following, and I really did enjoy that because the community is a huge resource. So if you're just getting into the idea of filmmaking and you want something that does not do photos at all, this camera is an incredible choice because it has an incredible community backing it. If you want the hard answers up front, here they are. That way we can get this out of the way, you can draw your conclusions, and then I can ramble about my thoughts and reflections for this camera. Should you get the 6K Pro or the 6K G2? For me, this is a no-brainer. I would get the 6K Pro 1,000 times over because having built-in ND filters is a dream. It is my most used feature on any camera, and I wish every single camera had it, because if you're wanting to shoot in a low f-stop in a bright area, you're either gonna have to go find a screw in ND, find the step-up rings and everything, but you can just have it built in, and I love having it built in. Should you upgrade from your Pocket 6K to the Pro? Well, if you're like me and you own a Pocket 6K and the Pro has come out, you have probably already solved most of the problems that you get with the Pocket 6K. You've already bought a matte box to cover the fact that you don't have built-in NDs. You've already figured out how to extend the battery life to cover for the terrible battery life. And the flip-out screen I've solved with monitors and control monitors. So it's one of those features where it's like, yeah, it would be nice to have if I originally had it, but it's really tough to upgrade to. So that makes the 6K Pro feel more like a redundancy for people who have already owned the 6K. But if you are just getting into it, wow, this solved every problem that I had when I was getting into the Blackmagic, and I really wish this thing was around back then. Speaking of back then, if I had to do it over again, would I get the 6K Pro or stick with my FX3s? And this one has me torn, because knowing what I know now in the world of filmmaking in these 3 years of growth, if I had to do it all over again from scratch and I got to keep my Ronin 4D, I would definitely get two 6K Pros instead of my FX3s. Here's the reason. I haven't been utilizing the selling features of the Sony FX3 recently. I finally kind of separated my cameras into doing very specific jobs, and the jobs that my FX3 do are interview setups. They keep long form coverage. That means I'm not using the built-in stabilization, and having 6K B-RAW would be so much more flexible than the image that I'm getting out of my FX3s. Not saying that the FX3's images are bad. It's really hard to get a bad look with any camera nowadays, but B-Raw was so much fun to work with. Plus, when I switched from Blackmagic to Sony, I was using Premiere Pro, and I was not taking advantage of the latitude that B-Raw gave me. It was just something fun to shoot into, something to tweak the ISO after the fact. But using DaVinci Resolve, I've been able to push my images so much further and get a much better look because the platform feels more natural to me. So pairing B-Raw with the platform of DaVinci Resolve would make so much sense. Low light wise, the FX3 is still worlds ahead of most cameras, and not even the Blackmagic Pocket 6K can keep up with it. But over this 3-year journey, I've learned how to shape light and work with light so much better. So I feel like I can compensate for the lack of low light performance that this camera has. But the great thing is with the FX3, I don't have to think about it. So doing it over again, I could have saved a ton of money and stuck with my Blackmagic cameras. But that's part of the journey, and that's something that I would not trade for anything, because it was growing and figuring out where I wanted to be and what I wanted to do, because what I've wanted to do has shifted so much over the last 3 years. And I say this camera doesn't need a review because the image it produces is phenomenal. It can punch way above its weight class, and this camera has a proven track record at this point. This is literally the camera that I started my video production business with, but better. So I know from years of experience, if this produces the exact same thing as that produces, then this camera is already well worth the money. And it's always been a no-brainer if you are someone who's considering getting into the Blackmagic lifestyle. It's cameras like this that I will never stop recommending, because things like this, they aren't overpriced. They are so value driven, and they are so beginner friendly. Using this camera over the past 2.5 months, I see what I've missed out on, because I've been using the Ronin 4D mostly, and I always compare the menu system to the Blackmagic. And then I came back to the Blackmagic's menu system, and I was like, wow, even though DJI is close, the way this thing feels and the way this thing operates is still just my personal favorite. So as somebody who is trying to get into the world of filmmaking, man, Blackmagic is still one of the best choices that you can make, because you get so much latitude with this camera and with all of its cameras. And it's one of those things where if you get a camera like that, you probably can just stick with it for a while. Unless you know you need low light performance, and unless you know you need internal image stabilization. But future guests here, I'm guessing those are going to be the two things that they probably work on in the future, because they create incredible cameras that produce incredible images. So the few things that they lack are the main things that the company's probably going to push for in the future. So if you know you don't need photo, this is a very tough camera to pass up, because that was always a thing for me. I was trying to live the double life of photo and video, and slowly but surely I edged out the photo and went full video. And having this camera as a stepping stone, I just wouldn't trade it for anything. Using it over the last 2 months, it's been a lot of fun. Like, it feels really good to have an all-in-one package like this. Finally having a flip out screen, I didn't know if that was gonna make me love the camera so much more, but yeah, it really did. Having the flip out screen, having a much brighter screen, and having built-in NDs right where my thumb sits, it makes the filmmaking process so much easier. So I haven't really been using this thing on my commercial shoots, because I have that process dialed in with clients and talent and the crew that I work with. But I've been using it for personal filmmaking, and on a personal filmmaking level, this camera makes me want to travel with it more. I used to get out, you know, go to California, go to New York, take my Blackmagic and just film. But it was always a little cumbersome, because I was trying to keep it built out, and it was very hard to keep it in a smaller form factor, because I need to compensate for the battery, because I need to compensate for the NDs, because I need to compensate for the monitor. But now, as I said earlier, this feels like a much more complete solution. And I'm all for having a complete solution in the camera. A small upgrade, but This adds so much more to an already phenomenal camera. So I mean it when I say this camera doesn't need a review, because this camera has been reviewed thousands and thousands of times over. But it's just good to look back and reflect on a camera that I started off with and notice how far it's come and how it's still relevant to this day. Because even though I filmed with the Ronin 4D and even though I filmed with the Sony FX3s, if I had to do everything with this camera, I would still be just as happy. But with that all being said, that's all I have for you today, guys. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you loved it, consider subscribing, because I'm bringing you more content just like this every week. So you guys stay safe, you're loved, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.